everything there is a season. A short story by Alistair MacLeod. I am speaking here of a time when I was 11 and lived with my family on our small farm on the west coast of Cape Breton. My family had been there for a long, long time, and so it seemed had I. And much of that time seems like the proverbial yesterday. Yet when I speak on this Christmas, 1977, I am not sure how much I speak with the voice of that time or how much in the voice of what I have since become. And I am not sure how many liberties I may be taking with the boy I think I was, for Christmas is a time of both past and present, and often the two are imperfectly blended. As we step into its nowness, we often look behind. We have been waiting now, it seems forever. Actually, it has been most intense since Halloween, when the first snow fell upon us as we moved like muffled mummers upon darkened country roads. The large flakes were soft, and new then, and almost generous, and the earth to which they fell was still warm, and as yet unfrozen. They fell in silence into the puddles and into the sea, where they disappeared at the moment of contact. They disappeared, too, upon touching the heated redness of our necks and hands, or the faces of those who did not wear masks. We carried our pillowcases from house to house, knocking on doors to become silhouettes in the light thrown out from kitchens, white pillowcases held out by whitened forms. The snow fell between us and the doors, and was transformed into shimmering golden beams. When we turned to leave, it fell upon our footprints, and as the night wore on, obliterated them and all records of our movements. In the morning, everything was soft and still, and November had come upon us. My brother Kenneth, who is 2.5, is unsure of his last Christmas. It is Halloween that looms largest in his memory as an exceptional time of being up late in magic darkness and falling snow. "Who are you going to dress up as at Christmas?" he asks. "I think I'll be a snowman." All of us laugh at that and tell him Santa Claus will find him if he is good, and that he need not dress up at all. We go about our appointed tasks, waiting for it to happen. I am troubled myself about the nature of Santa Claus, and I am trying to hang on to him any way that I can. It is true that at my age I no longer really believe in him, yet I have hoped in all his possibilities as fiercely as I can. Much in the same way, I think, that the drowning man waves desperately to the lights of the passing ship on the high sea's darkness. For without him, as without the man's ship, it seems our fragile lives would be so much more desperate. My mother has been fairly tolerant of my attempted perpetuation, perhaps because she has encountered it before. Once I overheard her speaking about my sister Anne to one of her neighbors. "I thought Anne would believe forever," she said. I practically had to tell her. I have somehow always wished I had not heard her say that, as I seek sanctuary and reinforcement even in an ignorance I know I dare not trust. Kenneth, however, believes with unadulterated fervour, and so do Bruce and Barry, who are 6-year-old twins. Beyond me there is Annie, who is 13, and Mary, who is 15, both of whom seem to be leaving childhood at an alarming rate. My mother has told us that she was already married when she was 17, which is only 2 years older than Mary is now. That, too, seems strange to contemplate, and perhaps childhood is shorter for some than it is for others. I think of this sometimes, in the evenings when we have finished our chores and the supper dishes have been cleared away, and we are supposed to be doing our homework. I glance sideways at my mother, who is always knitting or mending, and at my father, who mostly sits by the stove, coughing quietly with his handkerchief at his mouth. He has not been well for over 2 years, and has difficulty breathing whenever he moves at more than the slowest pace. He is most sympathetic of all concerning my extended hopes, and says we should hang on to the good things in our lives as long as we are able. As I look at him out of the corner of my eye, it does not seem that he has many of them left. He is old, we think, at 42. Yet Christmas, in spite of all of the doubts of our different ages, is a fine and splendid time, and now, as we pass the midpoint of December, our expectations are heightened by the increasing coldness that has settled down upon us. The ocean is flat and calm, and along the coast, in the scooped-out coves, has turned to an icy slush. The brook that flows past our house is almost totally frozen, and there is only a small channel of rushing water that flows openly at its very center. When we let the cattle out to drink, we chop holes with the axe at the brook's edge so that they can drink without venturing onto the ice. The sheep move in and out of their lean-to shelter restlessly, stamping their feet or huddling together in tightly packed groups. A conspiracy of wool against the cold. The hens perch high on their roosts with their feathers fluffed out about them, hardly feeling it worthwhile to descend to the floor for the few scant kernels of grain. The pig, who has little time before his butchering, squeals his displeasure to the cold, and with his snout tosses his wooden trough high in the icy air. The splendid young horse paws the planking of his stall and gnaws the wooden crib-work of his manger. We have put a protective barricade of spruce boughs about our kitchen door and banked our house with additional boughs and billows of eelgrass. Still, the pail of water we leave standing in the porch is solid in the morning and has to be broken with the hammer. The clothes my mother hangs on the line are frozen almost instantly and sway and creak from their suspending clothespins like sections of dismantled robots. The stiff-legged rasping trousers, and the shirts and sweaters with unyielding arms outstretched. In the morning, we race from our frigid upstairs bedrooms to finish dressing around the kitchen stove. We would extend our coldness half a continent away to the Great Lakes of Ontario, so that it might hasten the Christmas coming of my oldest brother Neil. He is 19 and employed on the lake boats, the long flat carriers of grain and iron ore, whose season ends any day after December 10th, depending on the ice conditions. We wish it to be cold on the Great Lakes of Ontario, so that he may come home to us as soon as possible. Already his cartons have arrived. They come from different places: Cobourg, Toronto, St. Catharines, Welland, Windsor, Sarnia, Sault Ste. Marie, places that we, with the exception of my father, have never been. We locate them excitedly on the map, tracing their outlines with eager fingers. The cartons bear the lettering of Canada Steamship Lines, and are bound with rope knotted intricately in the fashion of sailors. My mother says that they contain his clothes, and we are not allowed to open them. For us, it is impossible to know the time or manner of his coming. If the lakes freeze early, he may come by train because it is cheaper. If the lakes stay open until December 20th, he will have to fly because his time will be more precious than his money. He will hitchhike the last 60 or 100 miles from either station or airport. On our part, we can do nothing but listen with straining ears to radio reports of distant ice formations. His coming seems to depend on so many factors which are out there far beyond us and over which we lack control. The days go by in fevered slowness, until finally, on the morning of December 23rd, the strange car rolls into our yard. My mother touches her hand to her lips and whispers, "Thank God." My father gets up unsteadily from his chair to look through the window. Their longed-for son and our golden older brother is here at last. He is here with his reddish hair and beard, and we can hear his hearty laugh. He will be happy and strong and confident for us all. There are 3 other young men with him who look much the same as he. They, too, are from the boats and are trying to get home to Newfoundland. They must still drive 100 miles to reach the ferry at North Sydney. The car seems very old. They purchased it in Thorold for $200 because they were too late to make any reservations, and they have driven steadily since they began. In northern New Brunswick, their windshield wipers failed, but instead of stopping, they tied lengths of cord to the wipers' arms and passed them through the front window vents. Since that time, in whatever precipitation, one of them has pulled the cords back and forth to make sure the wipers function. This information falls tiredly but excitedly from their lips, and we greedily gather it in. My father pours them drinks of rum, and my mother takes out her mincemeat and the fruitcakes she has been carefully hoarding. We lean on furniture or look from the safety of sheltered doorways. We would like to hug our brother, but are too shy with strangers present. In the kitchen's warmth, the young men begin to nod and doze, their heads dropping suddenly to their chests. They nudge each other with their feet and attempt to keep awake. They will not stay and rest, because they have come so far, and tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and stretches of mountains and water still lie between them and those they love. After they leave, we pounce upon our brother physically and verbally. He laughs and shouts and lifts us over his head and swings us in his muscular arms. Yet in spite of his happiness, he seems surprised at the appearance of his father, whom he has not seen since March. My father merely smiles at him, while my mother bites her lip. Now that he is here, there is a great flurry of activity. We have left everything we could until the time he might be with us. Eagerly, I show him the fir tree on the hill, which I have been watching for months, and marvel at how easily he fells it and carries it down the hill. We fall over one another in the excitement of decoration. He promises that on Christmas Eve he will take us to church in the sleigh behind the splendid horse that until his coming we were all afraid to handle. And on the afternoon of Christmas Eve he shoes the horse, lifting each hoof and rasping it fine, and hammering the cherry-red horseshoes into a shape upon the anvil. Later he drops them hissingly into the steaming tub of water. My father sits beside him on an overturned pail and tells him what to do. Sometimes we argue with our father, but our brother does everything he says. That night, bundled in hay and voluminous coats, and with heated stones at our feet, we start upon our journey. Our parents and Kenneth remain at the home, but all the rest of us go. Before we leave, we feed the cattle and sheep, and even the pig, all that they can possibly eat, so that they will be contented on Christmas Eve. Our parents wave to us from the doorway. We go 4 miles across the mountain road. It is a primitive logging trail, and there will be no cars or other vehicles upon it. At first the horse is wild with excitement and lack of exercise, and my brother has to stand at the front of the sleigh and lean backwards on the reins. Later he settles down to a trot, and still later to a walk, as the mountain rises before him. We sing all the Christmas songs we know, and watch for rabbits and foxes scudding across the open patches of snow, and listen to the drumming of partridge wings. We are never cold. When we descend to the country church, we tie the horse in a grove of trees, where he will be sheltered and not frightened by the many cars. We put a blanket over him and give him oats. At the church door, the neighbors shake hands with my brother. "Hello, Neil," they say. "How is your father?" "Oh," he says, "just, oh." The church is very beautiful at night, with its festooned branches and glowing candles and the booming, joyous sounds that come from the choir loft. We go through the service as if we were mesmerized. On the way home, although the stones have cooled, we remain happy and warm. We listen to the creak of the leather harness and the hiss of runners on the snow, and begin to think of the potentiality of presents. When we are about a mile from home, the horse senses his destination and breaks into a trot, and then into a confident lope. My brother lets him go, and we move across the winter landscape like figures freed from a Christmas card. The snow from the horse's hooves falls about our heads like the whiteness of the stars. After we have stabled the horse, we talk with our parents and eat the meal our mother has prepared. And then I am sleepy, and it is time for the younger children to be in bed. But tonight my father says to me, "We would like you to stay up with us for a while." And so I stay quietly with the older members of my family. When all is silent upstairs, Neil brings in the cartons that contain his clothes and begins to open them. He unties the intricate knots quickly, their whorls falling away before his agile fingers. The boxes are filled with gifts neatly wrapped and bearing tags. The ones for my younger brothers say, "From Santa Claus," but mine are not among them any more, as I know with certainty they will never be again. Yet I am not so much surprised as touched by a pang of loss at being here on the adult side of the world. It is as if I have suddenly moved into another room, and heard a door click lastingly behind me. I am jabbed by my own small wound. But then, I look at those before me. I look at my parents drawn together before the Christmas tree. My mother has her hand upon my father's shoulder, and he is holding his ever-present handkerchief. I look at my sisters, who have crossed this threshold ahead of me, and now each day journey farther from their lives they knew as girls. I look at my magic older brother, who has come to us this Christmas from half a continent away, bringing everything he has and is. All of them are captured in the tableau of their care. "Every man moves on," says my father quietly, and I think he speaks of Santa Claus. "But there is no need to grieve. He leaves good things behind."